Hello and welcome. I would like to talk about the Oktoberfest today, also known as Wiesn. Why the Oktoberfest takes place in September, why Oktoberfest beer is a bit stronger than normal beer, then what you have to do in order to stay safe and not to lose your stuff, what the Dirndl code is, that means how you can tell that a woman is single just by looking at her apron, and a few other things that you might find interesting. Now, first of all, the Oktoberfest is the biggest beer and folk festival in the world, and it's also an amusement park and fun fair with lots of rides, so it's not just about beer drinking. The Oktoberfest takes place in beautiful Munich, Bavaria, southern Germany. Right here. And it takes place in September, the last 2 weeks of September, and it ends on the 3rd of October, which is the day of the German reunion, a bank holiday. So the question is, why does it take place in September when it's called Oktoberfest? And how did it start? Well, first of all, it started off as a wedding in 1810. Former Crown Prince Ludwig, later King Ludwig I, got married to Therese of Sachsen-Hildburghausen. And back then, when royals got married, the whole city was invited for free food, free beer, and a horse race for entertainment. So the people loved it, and they said, we want to have this every year again. Of course, like a couple of days of partying for free, who wouldn't love that? But the thing is that the couple said, well, we're only going to get married once in a lifetime. However, if you do want a reason to celebrate, there is always a reason to celebrate. So why not celebrate the Kingdom of Bavaria instead? A few years before, in 1806, Bavaria became a kingdom. And then the decision was, okay, let's celebrate the Kingdom of Bavaria instead. And because the wedding was in October 1810, this wedding was soon known as the Oktoberfest and took place every year in October. But because of the weather, they decided to shift it into September instead. Usually in September, the weather is a lot better than in October. And that's the simple reason, the weather. So this is the reason why the Oktoberfest starts in September but ends in October, so the name is still justified. And yes, as I said, it's the biggest beer festival in the world. But the beer is a little bit stronger. It has about 6% of alcohol compared to 5% that's normal. But there is, of course, a historic reason. The reason is that in former times, people weren't allowed to brew beer in summertime. They needed low temperatures to brew the beer. So they brewed the last beer in spring. And in order to make sure that they could store it longer, by the way, storage in German is Lager. This is why you call the beer, you call it Lager. Yeah, in German it just means storage. So for you, a lager in a stein is basically this. But for us, a lager in a stein is a lager im Stein is a storage in a stone. So that doesn't make sense. This is just a beer or helles in a Mass. Mass is a liter. And this is a Maßkrug. So you have 1 liter of beer inside a Maßkrug. Yeah. So it's 6%. And it was a bit stronger so that you could store it longer. They needed basically low temperatures, so they had these cellars where they stored the beer, and they, in order to make sure that the cellar would stay nice and cool, they had like white pebble stones, and they had trees with short roots like chestnut trees to keep the cellar underneath nice and cool. And then they started putting up tables and benches underneath those trees, and this is how the beer garden started basically. And a bit more percent of alcohol means you can store the beer a bit longer, and therefore that was the beer that they sold at Oktoberfest, and they still sell this beer, this 6% of alcohol beer. So mind you, be careful when you drink. It is a bit stronger, but at least you get your money's worth, right? So that's not bad at all. Then when you hear ein Prosit der Gemütlichkeit, it means cheers to feeling comfortable, cheers to feeling cozy. You have to clink the glasses together. And of course they animate you, they make sure that you drink enough. They play the song ein Prosit der Gemütlichkeit, ein Prosit der Gemütlichkeit. And then Eins, zwei, drei, Xuffer. And then you drink. And this way they make sure that people do drink a lot. And the people clink glasses together, of course, because of historic reasons again. In former times, people wanted to make sure that they didn't get poisoned. When they were afraid of getting poisoned, they clinked the glasses together. They had usually like these humps of wood, or they had horns that they drank out of, and they would clink them together with so much power that the liquids would spill, mixing up with the drink of the other person. And this was a way of preventing of getting poisoned by doing this with everybody else in the room, looking into the eyes, is he honest or not? And then this basically helped to save lives in the Middle Ages. So this is why we still clink glasses together. In German we say Prost, not to be confused with Brust. Brust means breast, and Prost is cheers. It comes from Latin prodesse, to be beneficial, so it should be beneficial. And this is where the word cheers, Prost, comes from. And when you get drunk, then people tend to lose their stuff. First of all, it's forbidden nowadays to bring bags or backpacks to the Oktoberfest, at least when they exceed 3 liters of volume. So make sure not to bring any big bags or backpacks, otherwise security control won't let you in. What I always do is I have my apron, and then underneath my apron I have a little bag, and here inside this bag I have a security needle, and this is where my wallet's on, and also my keys, and like this I cannot lose anything. It's safely inside my bag. Now, the apron has another role at the Oktoberfest. There's the so-called apron code. So if you want to know if someone is single or not, you just look at the apron. If the girl has her bow on the left, she's a single. If it's on the right, she is married or has a boyfriend. If it's in the center, she's a virgin. And if it's in the back, she's either a waitress or she's a widow. Now, drunk me one time, I went to one of those women who had their apron in the back, and I told her my condolences. Of course, she was confused, and I explained to her that having the bow in the back means that you're a widow. So I told her that I was awfully sorry for the loss of her husband. And of course she was a little bit confused, but after me explaining it to her, she tied it the right way. So it's kind of unfair that men don't have a code like this with their lederhosen. Oh well, I guess you just have to ask them. Yes, and basically that's it about my tips and about the most important things you have to know about the Wiesn. Wiesn we say in Bavaria because the Oktoberfest takes place at Theresienwiese. Therese was the bride who got married 1810. It took place at Theresienwiese, which means the meadow of Teresa, and therefore we just refer to it as Wiesn because of Theresienwiese. And it is actually pretty much central in Munich, so from the central station you can basically walk there. It's not far at all. So, I wish you a wonderful time at Oktoberfest. Enjoy, and Prost!